Hello everyone. Hi Amy, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I am doing very well, thank you, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's definitely great to have you here as well after being on your podcast. So I'm definitely just
Exactly.
like returning the favor, let's say. So, yeah, we're going to talk everything content repurposing with you today. This is your specialty, what you guys do at Content 10x. So, there's a first question that I always ask to every guest just because it's like everybody have their own perspective on this. So, what does content promotion mean to you specifically?
I guess the term content promotion, like it is what it says, isn't it? It's the promotion of your content. To me, I think it's a really important word and something that a lot of businesses and content creators sometimes forget about, which is not just the content creation and content publish, but content promotion. So it's everything that you need to do to make sure that you get your content in front of as many people as possible. So it's the promotion of the content that you create. And I know we're going to talk about content repurposing today, which I guess is a form of content promotion in terms of there's loads of different reasons why you repurpose content, but one of those very much is to promote the core content that you create. But yeah, I guess the term encapsulates everything that you need to do to make sure that when you create and publish content that you actually get people to see and view and listen whatever format it is through the promotion of that content.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with this view. There's a lot of people that, for some reason, give the word promotion a bad connotation, like it's something salesy. But I think if you do it right, if you do it with value in mind, specifically, so if we're talking about content repurposing, like you're creating something that's unique from the core content asset that's going to benefit the other person or the specific medium.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It depends on the medium and different ways to promote. But yeah, it's not salesy, it's necessary.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and how you became passionate about content repurposing?
Yeah, of course I can. My background isn't a particularly traditional route into running a content repurposing agency. Not that I know whether there is a traditional route to running a content repurposing agency, but I degree in management and mathematics, did a bit of travel before settling down and getting a career, and then embarked on a management consultancy career, which I was in for over a decade. So I was working in mergers and acquisitions, large scale transformation programs with like big Fortune 500 companies. And when I guess I didn't want to do as much travel anymore and couldn't really do as much travel anymore when having kids, I was looking to start my own thing, like kind of time to maybe branch out on my own. I'd always fancied doing that. My Accenture plan was always a 1 year plan that became 12 years. I started to do some consultancy, like business consultancy myself, tried to set something up in that regard. That was what I knew. And I realized that I needed to create content, start making a bit of a name for myself. And I was really interested in potentially setting up an online business. So I immersed myself in the world of online business people at that time, which was like Gary Vaynerchuk, Pat Flynn, Amy Porterfield, all those people. And I was creating content by doing these weekly videos and then turning them into blog posts and graphics and social posts and things like that. So I had people supporting me. I had a writer with doing the blog post writing, had a designer creating graphics and all of that. And it just dawned on me that there was a potential kind of, I guess, business opportunity there to work with businesses that create these big pieces of content and then don't necessarily have a team to support them with repurposing the content, or they have a team but they don't have the capacity, or they don't want to be juggling all the freelancers, the writer, the designer, the video editor, all the different freelancers that you pull together to really repurpose effectively. So why not have one business that you could go to who would do that for you? So that's when I got really excited, and I guess I'm quite geeky in terms of really love like it when systems and processes come together and you can optimize them. That's all the management consultancy side coming out of me. Yeah, then I went all in then on developing content 10x, and it will have our 6th birthday in a few weeks' time. So it'll be 6 years of running content 10x. So we just started small and like gradually took on more clients and built the team up as I went along. And I guess when I started content 10x, not many people at all were talking about content repurposing. So I tried to embark upon becoming like the known go-to person for repurposing. So I've been podcasting weekly about content repurposing for over 5 years and blogging every week, and every piece of social content has generally been about content repurposing for over 5 years now. I'm not the only person who talks about it anymore, but I think I was definitely the first person that only ever spoke about content repurposing. And yeah, here we are today.
Awesome. That's great. And so can you still find topics to write about and to talk about after all these years?
Yeah. So when I embarked upon the podcast, and it was going to be a weekly podcast about content repurposing, I was quite nervous about that. And I remember thinking at the time, instead of saying it's weekly, shall I just do a season where I do 10 episodes and then see how it goes? But I thought, no, that's a bit of a cop out. Like, you just embark on it, see how long you can make it go. And I thought maybe I'd manage to make a year or 2 years and then probably just have to start talking about the same things again, or wrap it up. But no, I haven't. I think that the world of content and content marketing is always evolving and always changing, isn't it? There's new techniques and new tools, and there's just always new angles to look at as well. It's funny, but we have our ideas spreadsheet, and then when ideas like agreed upon, we'll move it to the main kind of episode spreadsheet, and we still have so many ideas that we haven't even touched on or researched or explored yet. So at the moment, I'm still not too struggling. Maybe ask me in a year and I'll say I can't think of anything else to say.
Yeah, that's cool because like sometimes I think that this podcast is quite niche. It's about
Yeah,
content promotion, but then you're even more niche because you're just talking about one
exactly.
specific aspect. So yeah, glad that
Yeah.
it's been working out. And so why do you think content repurposing is important for businesses, and how do you think businesses can use it to improve their brand, their sales, or whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, of course. I guess just to define like what I consider to be content repurposing. So it's all about ways that you can communicate messages in different formats. So video, audio, visual, written, and in different locations. So from your website to social media platforms, podcast platforms, YouTube, etc. And it's all about expanding your reach and ultimately connecting with the audience and resonating with them. And then if it's content marketing for business purposes, connections and conversions and sales, hopefully as well. So I think it's really important because it's all about doing more with less, really. So, looking at ways that you can come up with big ideas and big pieces of content and the big messages that you want to communicate and become known for, and then do more with those big pieces by creating more content for the different platforms. There's a few reasons why it's important. Firstly, to expand that message, like not everybody likes to read. So if you're only ever going to write blog posts and not all of your audience like to read, then you're not really going to be expanding your message in those different formats so that you can connect with people who prefer to consume content in different ways. It's not just format as well. Some people never move beyond short form content, no matter how much long form content you create. Some people only ever really look at the tweets, the Insta stories, and the TikToks and things like that. So it's also that expansion of content in your message and the location as well. People don't just happen to hang out on your website, but they do hang out on the platforms that they prefer to hang out on. It's important to take the message to them rather than expecting them to come to you. And we can do that from repurposing content as well. So, as well as the audience expansion and reach and connecting with more people and things like that, it's about the more efficient ways to work inside businesses as well, inside content teams. It's quite draining constantly coming up with something new to post on a social platform and the next YouTube video and the next piece of content here, there, and everywhere. So if you can tie processes that build in efficiency around creating bigger pieces and then repurposing them, and that's covering different platform strategies and things like that as well, then it's just an overall more effective way to work. And it helps you keep on message as well, because if you're thinking of those key big messages and big pieces of content that you want to be known for, and then that content is broken down and repurposed, it's still the same message. It's just hammering that home more and more. So it helps to control your brand and what you want to be known for as well. There's lots of reasons, but I think it's around the internal processes efficiency and doing more with less and saving time and all of that. And then the audience reach and impact that you gain from that as well.
Yeah, that's yeah, definitely great answer. I love that. All of that. I love efficiency. I'm all about creating efficiency and doing more with less. So definitely agree. So what would you say are the most common mistakes that people do when it comes to repurposing content? Because I'm sure you've seen everything under the sun there.
I think there's quite a few mistakes. So one of them is having no regard for different platforms. So thinking that you can share exactly the same thing with no platform focus or nuances. And so it's just a cut and paste approach, really, or copy and paste. So copying and pasting the same thing in different places. I think that's a mistake. I think that just because you're repurposing content doesn't mean that you disregard what your audience is on a particular platform for and the kind of content that they want on that platform and that kind of thing. For example, if you've repurposed a longer form video into a bunch of TikTok videos, which are great for TikTok. And yeah, you can copy and paste those maybe to Instagram Reels. But do your LinkedIn audience want to watch that TikTok video, or do your LinkedIn audience much prefer more insightful, like longer form text posts and maybe more like the image carousel posts that people like to slide through? Or on Twitter, do your audience want that short video, or would they like to read an engaging Twitter thread and things like that? All of that is possible through repurposing, but just having a platform specific approach to repurposing. And I also think maybe another key mistake is like sounding a bit too repetitive, because you're not picking out the unique and interesting angles within your repurposed content. So you are just taking a key thing, like a key message, and then really just saying it in the same way, or even worse, in just a promotional way again and again, rather than maybe looking at it and thinking, what are the different messages that are coming out of this? What are the different viewpoints? Are there some interesting questions that come out of this piece of content? Are there some analogies that I didn't mention that I could mention in my repurposed content, or some examples that I didn't draw upon? So it's looking at the ways that you can find unique and interesting angles to make your repurposed content as high value as the original piece. Just because it's in a different format and a different location shouldn't diminish the value, really. So less promotion and more like interesting angles and different viewpoints in repurposed content, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, what is your process for determining the best content that can use some kind of repurposing on the client side? Because I'm assuming that you do repurposing on all the content that the clients have.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like how we work at Content 10X, like the majority of the content that we repurpose tends to be video content or audio content. And I think really the main reason for that is that there's so many dimensions that can come from video content, because a video, starting with video, you already have audio as well. So you have video and you have audio. Video content can easily become written content, because you can transcribe if you want, or just develop a written piece about what the topic was within the video. You can slice and dice into shorter videos, but you can also create visuals and graphics and things like that. So it's every dimension exists with video content, that we tend to start with video or audio. If for some reason there's just a preference to not put cameras on but create audio content, at least from audio content, it can still become written and become audiograms and become other content. So I think, that in terms of the format. Also, like Evergreen as well. If we're going to work with clients that are investing in repurposing support, then they want to obviously make sure that they get a big return on that investment. So if we work with Evergreen content and we're creating repurposed content from it, then the repurposed content is usually going to be, of course, Evergreen as well. So then we're building up a content treasure trove in a way of, you don't just have to share this now, but that'll be relevant to share again months down the line, and you can share on different platforms at different points in time and have a much longer promotion period of that repurposed content because it's evergreen and doesn't have to be just out now and timely and topical. So it's usually like that kind of content, video, audio, and usually evergreen, not always completely. Like sometimes when we're helping clients to promote, say, an event, we might repurpose a recent, say, research report or something like that that they did, and that is timely because it's all building up to this big event that they've got coming up. So there are exceptions, but yeah, usually evergreen. And just the high quality, I don't necessarily mean high production value. It doesn't have to be, if it's a podcast, like high quality, meaning like a full production crew in studio. The message, like just the content, what is actually being said, is high quality. Yeah, as opposed to like really high production value. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to know, do you only look for clients that are already doing video or maybe audio, or is this something that you help those clients with creating?
Yeah, no, a bit of a mix actually, to be honest. So we quite often work with clients who have already been doing the content themselves and maybe trying to repurpose, and they already have, let's say, a weekly video or weekly podcast or something like that, but they're struggling and they need some help, or they haven't been doing any repurposing, but they have already been creating the content. But actually, I'd say at least in the last couple of years or so, more so, it's been launching with them as well. So they're coming to us and saying, we want to start creating, let's say, like a video podcast, and it's new territory for us. We love that because it's really nice taking on an existing piece of content and doing more with the client to help them get more from it. But there's definitely something to be said more for being at the start of that journey with them. So actually helping them with everything, because we manage the whole launch. It's nice to design the podcast artwork and help them with the format and things like that, and then get into that rhythm, whatever it may be, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. So yeah, a bit of both really. We can go either way. I guess that I think the key thing is that as long as they embrace content marketing really and truly get it and understand the importance, then we're on the same page and then we can work well together.
Yeah. And so we already covered some of your process here, starting from video. So let's say that I'm a new client, but I only do the very like basic bare minimum that most companies do, which is like blog articles. And so I'm coming to you and I like either looking to get started working with you or maybe I'm looking for tips for starting to do it myself. So what would you say is the 80/20 for a company to get started with content repurposing? Maybe just starting from a blog article kind of setup.
Yeah, I think if they're starting with a blog post and they're looking to get some help with doing it in house and they're not really repurposing at the moment, then the first thing I would say is if they're not doing it at the moment, then rather than developing a really huge repurposing plan of we'll take your blog post and turn it into 10 graphics and create some short animations and do some Twitter threads and some carousel posts and things like that, it's too much work. Yeah, they're like, it's from 0 to 100 miles an hour, and it's not necessarily going to stick. Might manage to do it for about a week or two, and then it'll fall flat. So I tend to say, firstly, just maybe look at, let's say, a key platform that you want to focus on. So let's not look at all the social platforms for now, then. Let's focus on LinkedIn because that's where you say that your main clients are. And let's look at, from this blog post, maybe just 2 or 3 things that you could do every week. Let's say it's a weekly blog post that you can develop into a repurposing rigor and practice that you follow. And then, as we were saying before about like platform focus, then I look at, we've agreed on a platform, so let's look specifically at what would work on this platform. We'd choose a couple of things, and I would probably say, let's turn your blog post into maybe a couple of LinkedIn posts, like maybe a longer form one, like about the blog post and what it covers, and then maybe do something short. If it raises a really good question, then maybe you could alternate between doing a poll one week related to the blog post, and then the next week maybe a GIF or something like that, or a meme, and then maybe just like something like an image carousel, let's say. So let's create 7 key points from it and then share that as part of your repurposing. So you've got 3 posts going on from your LinkedIn page every week that are different, looking at things from a slightly different angle, and are different formats as well. We've got something written, we've got something in visual, and then maybe some kind of interactive, something like a poll or something like that. So, like we were saying about different learners and things like that. But then I'd say do 2 things. Firstly, write this up as a process then. So we both saying we like processes. If you're going to commit to doing it regularly, then maybe you use Trello or ClickUp or Asana or one of those project management tools. Otherwise, a good old Google Sheet or Excel sheet or something. But develop that process and then follow it regularly on a repeatable schedule, like every week. Follow your process. Don't even start the next blog post until you've followed this process, and look at the results as well. So then allow a sufficient period of time, see how things are working. And then when you're ready and it's become habitual and it's just something that is the thing that you do without question every time you do blog posts, add the next repurposing step on. Maybe that would be doing more to LinkedIn, or maybe you would expand then. So we're already writing this carousel and we want to start repurposing a bit onto Twitter. So wordsmith that out into a Twitter thread and add that as a next step onto the process. And again,
Mhm.
do it for a month, make it part of your standard process, get used to it, look at how it works. And I think that is my best advice is don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Just allow it to be a step-by-step process. Even if you've got a big like grand ideas of everything you want to do with your repurposing, doing it step by step, you'll still get there in the end instead of just immediately scaling the mountain. But if you build in the processes, you'll get really good at it, you'll get more efficient at it, and you'll be looking and making incremental improvements as well as you go by looking at how things work. So yeah, that would be my advice: to break it down, set it up as processes and make it habitual in terms of that practice.
Yeah, this is very good advice also for myself for this podcast specifically. I started a couple months ago now, and so far I'm still doing everything myself, but it still takes, like I would say, 3 4 hours per week maybe, with the editing and creating the different social media graphics, the blog post, uploading on YouTube. And so far, I do have quite a good process, which I'm hoping to be able to delegate soon to someone in the team. But yeah, definitely understand the point of choosing just the best possible platforms for you. Because, for example, for me, I know, like I knew from the get go that I don't use Instagram for my business. So that was like out of the question, anyways. So for me, it's mainly just Twitter and LinkedIn. And now I'm seeing after 2 3 months doing this that LinkedIn is responding a lot better than Twitter. So I'm considering whether I should cut one of them out. What's your view on this? Like, when do you think is the time to maybe cut one channel out, or should I keep testing on it?
I presume like you've been on. Did you launch a new channel with the podcast, or are you
No, I'm
gone on?
doing
Yeah,
still doing mostly through my personal profiles. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I was going to say, obviously, slightly different answer if it was like a brand new channel, like brand new account. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because your audience and I guess you're seeing how they are responding. And again, like it's useful to, I think, just ask as well. Just put some word out about the content that's coming from the podcast. What are you guys thinking and things like that. I definitely, both in content marketing, we know it's a long game in most cases. So I definitely think you said a couple of months. I do think you need to, things do need like a good, yeah, at least 3 months or so to really take that test and that view. And then I guess it's whether to cut it out, isn't it? Or whether to cut out that type of content, like that format of content, and maybe look at playing around with some different content that you can create for the platform. So I would keep just iterating with trying different things. We've done that over the years, like with so many different things that we've tried on the different platforms, like different types of memes and GIFs and carousels and threads and this and that and stuff like that. You just have to keep testing and iterating, don't you? I think that's it. It's like making small iterations as well, because maybe you are just one tweak away from the thing that will resonate as well. And also, it's like there's been a lot of, like you mentioned, Twitter, there's been so much change on the platform recently. It's a judgment on whether it's that or just the platform changes as well, isn't it?
Yeah, have you seen something similar, like a decrease in engagement, like generally speaking, on Twitter?
Yeah, I think so. Not from the hugest subset of accounts, but I would say that it's been a bit of a funny place. And for the B2B type accounts that we have and we work with, I would say there's been a bit of a decline. I think in reach, I just think there's a bit of a decline in the
Yeah,
reach. Yeah.
yeah. And so let's say, so I'm a client and we're doing the repurposing from the videos and everything. How do you measure the success of like campaigns that you do for clients? What are the main KPIs that you track, if any?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways of looking at this because when we are creating content and then repurposing content, typically it's content the content that's being repurposed and created is content that we would already or our clients would have already been creating anyway. It's just that we're creating it specifically through repurposed processes. So we're putting content onto LinkedIn or onto Twitter or onto TikTok or Instagram. We're putting a blog post onto the website, putting video onto YouTube, putting the podcast onto the podcast hosting platform. And then there's the usual metrics that you would use to track anything that goes on those platforms. So when we've created a repurposed video and that goes on to YouTube, there's all the usual measurements, the statistics, the analytics that you can get hold of for YouTube around like views and dropout rates of throughout the video and things like that. When it's the podcast, obviously there's all the download statistics and locations and duration of listen, say on LinkedIn, shares, likes and reach, engagement, etc. So with the repurposed content, firstly, I think that, when it's going out onto the platforms and you're already measuring what's going on with the other content that you're putting on those platforms, it shouldn't really stand any differently in terms of it's on those platforms and you should be measuring it in the way that you measure content that goes onto those platforms. But when you have a repurposing process where you've got like a main piece of content and then there's this additional content that has been created because of its existence through repurposing, I think it's good to find ways to measure, you said, like at a campaign level, the results of the main piece of content and or the repurposed content together in one piece, so you track it. So if you put out a, say, webinar on your website and it was a live webinar and 200 people turned up to the live webinar, and then through repurposing, like an extra 5,000 people watched it on YouTube, 2,000 people downloaded the podcast, like 10,000 people engage with it across your social media platforms and things like that. I think then you have the non repurposed, if we called it quits there, around whatever I said, 200 views or something. But through repurposing, we gained the extra 50,000 eyes and ears and reads. So yeah, you repurpose it into a blog post. So how many people visited that blog post and what did bounce rate look like? How many people watched the repurposed video? So I think that you can measure through the power of repurposing the expansion of that piece of content because you'll have all of those numbers and statistics and things like that. Now, I know that you could argue that all didn't happen like organically by chance, though. There was a lot of work that was put into creating all the extra content. So it's not just if we did, that happened. And if we didn't, we've no extra work or this happened, because there was a lot of extra work that caused that. But then again, then I think, like, if you're really wanting to start looking at ROI, it's measuring the time then that it's taking within the business. How much time did it take, though, to go from that main piece to a YouTube video, 3 YouTube shorts, a Twitter thread, and this, versus when you come up with the original kind of ideation for each individual new piece and all the time and fatigue it can take to come up with something brand new that isn't from repurpose but from blank canvas. And then you add, so then you can factor in like the time savings from the ROI as well. As you can see, it's not the simplest answer in terms of you can look at the different ways that you can measure it and you can come to your own conclusions about, we got this extra amount of views, and also not getting trapped in vanity metrics as well. Maybe you would say, yeah, we got more listens and we got more views and all of that, but like, where was the conversions? How many people clicked a link and booked a discovery call and things like that as well. So you need to be tracking that as well. I think you need to embark upon it knowing some of the key metrics that you will look at, and also measuring your time and the efficiency of creating this content too, and then playing them off against each other. For this additional time, this was the additional return, and working out if you would have got a similar return from deploying your time in a different way, I think, really.
Yeah, so you're asking what kind of amplification did we achieve from this
Yeah,
extra work?
exactly. And what was the results of the amplification? Yeah.
Any particular examples of campaigns that you like to share that stands out?
I We work with lots of different types of content, like that come to us, like from repurposing video podcasts to repurposing like webinar series and things like that. Sometimes it's things like virtual events as well, so more like projects. And I think like an interesting repurposing story that we had, because it was slightly unusual in what came to us, was with our client Linode, and they came to us like towards I guess the tail end of the pandemic. I think we were still coming out of lockdowns and things like that. There were still restrictions and events still weren't happening and things like that. And they had a bunch of customer interviews that they'd recorded, Zoom recorded or Riverside, but like for remote recording interviews. And the whole reason that they had done these recordings, these interviews with their customers, was to generate these case studies. So get lots of information and sound bites and things like that to produce these like printable, like PDF, hold it in your hand, printed out case studies, because they were mainly doing a lot of marketing for going out to big exhibitions, road shows and things like that, and being there speaking to all the developers that use their cloud hosting platform and handing out case studies for them and things like that. So they came to us with an interesting like dilemma in terms of, we've got these really great interviews that we did with our customers, which was for the purpose of print content, and what can we do with them, because there's no one going to any of our events and we're not really going to be handing out these PDFs. And that was a really interesting and fun repurposing project, because we repurposed the customer interviews into a podcast, and it was more like a narrative style podcast, because unlike us today where the intention is a podcast and it's formatted and you're going to do an introduction and an outro and things like that, they obviously just embarked upon a call with no intention of it becoming a podcast. So we couldn't just slap that an intro and an outro and that was the end of that, because that's not the way it was recorded. So it was narrative. We had to go through all of the interviews and pick out themes and things like that, and bring in a narration and a script, and then weave it all together and create separate different episodes from these customer interviews. But it was great, and it all came together in the end. And then they launched their first ever podcast called Craft of Code. It was like a season 1, and we're now on season 3. So it went well. But then it was video content. So also we were able to turn it into some YouTube videos and some social media videos, and there was brilliant quotes and things like that. So we were able to create all the social content, quote graphics and things like that, and LinkedIn posts and that audiograms and things like that. So I think I just really like that story, because a big like a catchphrase of mine that I've been saying forever is that like content repurposing starts at the planning phase, and that you must create content with repurposing in mind, and it will repurpose better when you know what you're going to do with it. But this was like an exception to that, because it wasn't created with repurposing in mind, but I think it just showed through creative thinking and just like the repurposing mindset of still being able to view it and see what could it become, and it went on to become so much more. And then as they've gone on to do season 2 and season 3, those interviews have been recorded as podcast interviews, so we know now what to do and how to do it. But they still go on to become a blog post on the website and a printed content for road shows and things like that as well. So I like the way that the repurposing expands into print content for exhibitions and things like that, as well as the whole world of digital content and audio content and video content. So it's just a good example of what you can achieve, I think.
Yeah, definitely a great
Mm.
example of doing more with less, like you
Exactly.
said
Yeah.
before. Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, we're getting close to wrapping up. I'm always curious to see, like with all the different people that I talk to in different industries, what are some of the trends that you're seeing that are emerging that might impact your space?
It's probably like the most like overused answer maybe, but definitely around AI. I don't know whether we call that, it's not a trend, is it? But a hot topic and something emerging because in repurposing, there's already quite a few tools out there that are built on AI, like tools that will take a blog post and analyze it and then split out like a bunch of tweets and things like that that you could share based off an AI analysis of the post and things like that. So there's quite a few different tools. And then, like, from the writing component in repurposing, because I think writing is one of the most important roles within repurposing, actually turning this content into written content. There's a lot of, again, like AI opportunity there. So I think that's a big thing. Like, it certainly as a team, we are keeping at the forefront of knowing what's out there. Certainly haven't found any concerns over AI replacing the writing team at all. I don't think it's not good for long form content at all, but it's good for ideation and it's good for helping you come up with alternative titles and things like that. It'll only keep getting better, won't it? Something that we are keeping an eye on and I have a keen interest in as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Mm.
definitely think it's good as a brainstorming partner and
Yeah.
something of an assistant. Like I use it, for example, for these podcasts, I use it to, what I do is I feed the transcript to the AI and I ask it to give me the main takeaways, the main talking points. And so it works pretty well. Like it gives me like around 10, 15 points. And then I always go through them and making sure that it's actually what the guest said and not like something that's making up. But yeah, it works pretty well. And it saves a lot of time for me to have to sift through the whole transcript and everything. So it's definitely something that I recommend. Cool. So you mentioned that you have a scorecard that you wanted to give away to our listeners. Can you tell us a bit more about what that is and how it works?
Yeah, it's so that our content repurposing effectiveness scorecard, and it's something that we launched like a little while ago at the end of last year, and it's really quick and easy. Like it takes a few minutes or so to get through the 21, I think it is, fairly quick questions. But the whole idea of it is that it's a bit of a sort of a diagnostic. So it lets you know where you are on the content repurposing spectrum, looking at different areas from like repurposing mindset to processes and systems to what you're currently doing, like practices and things like that. And then it lets you like a scoring across those areas, but then gives you really targeted like advice, like content that you can refer to, just all free content, like very specific articles or downloads or podcast episodes or whatever that would bridge the gap of getting you higher up the repurposing spectrum. So it's super useful. We've had like really fantastic feedback from it of how like useful it is, and people
Awesome.
like to do a quick quiz as well, don't they? So it gives you a
Yeah.
quick diagnosis as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been really well received, and that's at content10x.com/scorecard.
Cool. So yeah, we'll include that in the show notes. And so something else that I always like to end the podcast with is if you could have any 80s movie character, so this could be 80s but also 90s, I'll allow that's gonna promote your content, who would they be and why?
You know what? This is the easiest answer for me because it'd be Superman. It would be Christopher Reeve, of course, like the best Superman. Yeah, because when I first started Content 10X, we had a really like superhero side to our branding. It's not like a coincidence our colours are red, yellow, and blue because it was
Hmm.
based off Superman. And
Ah, I
yeah,
see.
exactly. And we were like the content superheroes. It was all about saving your day by repurposing your content. And we had a really like pop art and super like comic style theme, but we rebranded 2 years ago, grew up a little bit and became
Okay.
a bit more like, because we're aiming
Yeah.
at different kind of clients and things like that. So we lost that
Hmm.
superhero bit a bit, but we still retained them. Like we have our own superheroes, like the Content 10X men.
Yeah.
Pointing at my
Yeah.
little like comic book there. But yeah, 100% like it was a tie up between Batman and Superman only because the first ever explainer video that we had on our website. Like when I launched my website, I had this explainer video, and it was a content creator sat at their desk and they'd just done a piece of content. And then they pressed like a button on their desk, which was basically the bat button that Batman
Mm.
presses. Well, no, when Commissioner Gordon or whatever presses it and the bat sign
Yeah,
goes up in the
the
air. So
bad
that's
signal.
what it was. Yeah. So he had the content 10x signal on his desk and he pressed it, and then it shone up in the sky, and our logo went up in the sky. And then the content 10x superheroes came in, swooped down, got his podcast episode or whatever, and then it all exploded and stuff. And that was our explainer
I love
video.
that.
It was that good. It was so good. It's still on our YouTube, but it's all in our old branding. That's the problem
Yeah,
for
yeah.
rebrand, isn't it?
Mm.
So I was thinking, but even though that was like aimed the whole bat sign thing, obviously, but it was always really more about Superman, to be honest. So yeah, like
That's
80s,
great.
80s.
That's
That's
great.
that 80s,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with? Any final tips? And then where can people find you and maybe get in touch with you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It's been an awesome conversation. And I think like my only final tip, I've already said it, but don't get overwhelmed with your repurposing. Even if you just add one extra step to an existing process to do one more thing with that piece of content, then that's starting on the repurposing journey. So try not to get overwhelmed and just do things one bit at a time. And to reach out to me, content10x.com, but the social media platform that I'm probably most like engaged on is LinkedIn, and you will probably not sure to find me. Amy Woods, Content 10x, put them together, you'll find me on
Okay.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll put all the links in the show notes, anyways. But yeah, thanks a lot, Amy. It's been great to have you. And yeah, looking forward to catching up again. Thank you. Bye bye.